Hello and a very warm welcome to the late breaking F1 podcast presented by Harry Eade, Sam Sage and me, Ben Hocking. Today reviewing the Miami Grand Prix, a Grand Prix won by Lando Norris. Lando Norris taking his first win in Formula One after so many missed opportunities. Of course, the great news now is that Nick Heidfeld resumes his role as having the most podiums without a win. So thank you for that, Lando Norris. But an epic day for him. It's been a while. I think they mentioned on commentary, Sam, 103 races or something like that with McLaren now. So he's in three figures, and after so many missed opportunities, it's finally there for him.
It was never an if it's going to happen. It was always going to be a when will it happen, and it has finally happened. McLaren fans, I'm sure that last 20-lap period for you was horrible. Even as just a broader F1 fan who doesn't support a driver, I was tense. I was sat there taking deep breaths, having to kind of almost coach Lando through it from the sofa. I know he can hear me, so it's definitely worth doing. And every single lap felt like an eternity. And I'm sure for you guys, for big Lando fans, for McLaren fans, you must have been sat there really going, oh, is this going to happen? Is something bad going to go wrong? And it didn't. He's got across the line. It's a lovely tribute to his mum, his dad. It was for his grandma, which is so sweet. He gave that credit back to the team. And fair play to McLaren, who brought 10 performance upgrades to Miami. We weren't sure whether this might be the right track to do so, but it's paid off for them, and it's culminated in his first ever race victory. And the first victory for McLaren in a full-length race since Ricciardo won in Monza, right? A good couple of years ago now. So it's a fantastic return to form. And I think it was Brundle that said this, that last time they were in Miami as a team, they finished over a minute behind the lead. We come back a year later, and they have won it. Well done, Lando. Well done, McLaren.
British bias is in full swing tonight, guys. Oh, the Brits. No?
Oh, God, no, not already. A UTB chant from Harry Eade.
Yeah.
Back to bed, Grandpa. Back to bed. Take your pills.
Yeah. Excellent race. All round. And not just because a British driver won it. I actually quite enjoyed that one. And I don't want to enjoy a race at Miami, but I did.
I love how it went against every fibre of your
being
to enjoy it, but you did in the end.
Yeah, I did. I don't like to enjoy races that aren't the UK, obviously, because Brexit.
Harry's got a Skeleton flag every track.
Good. We've got a lot to talk about on today's episode, so we'll be going through our moment of the race a little bit later on. Our driver of the day, worst driver of the day, that's all coming up. A few incidents that we want to look at and think if were the penalties or the non-penalties that were applied correct. Ferrari finishing third and fourth, Mercedes finishing sixth and eighth. But we will naturally start out front with Lando Norris taking a win over Max Verstappen. Norris, sixth place in the early goings of this Grand Prix. Eventually, though, with a safety car, meaning that when he stayed out a little bit longer compared to the others around him, he was able to take advantage of that. After his pit stop under the safety car, came out in the lead. And really, after some very early pressure from Max Verstappen on the first lap, it seemed like fairly easy going for him, Sam.
God, I think easy going is a very sweeping statement there, Benji. I'm sure that
he sailed off into the distance. He was miles away from anyone else.
Of course. It was as easy as, hopping out of bed and make yourself a cup of tea, I'm sure, for Lando Norris. Start of the Grand Prix when Sergio Perez nearly alerted Code Brown across all of the southern states of America as he almost took out his teammate. Lando Norris was heavily affected by this. He was held up in some of the melee around that. When Perez rejoined the track, Norris was the one massively affected because I think Perez comes straight back on right in front of Norris, causing him to have to hop off the throttle, hit the brakes. Piastri has absolutely taken advantage of this at this point and jumped into third place. And you think, oh, this isn't gone well for Lando. He's the one carrying the new upgrades. Piastri's only got half of them, which, side note, shows just how good those upgrades were, that Piastri was also incredibly competitive until the incident happened with Sainz. So the McLaren is going in the right direction. They figured out what wasn't great with their car, and they've made the right moves for it. But Lando, his race pace looked fantastic. It took a few laps to catch up to Perez. Perez peels off into the pits, and then he's unleashed. Lando is able to run through that clean air, and boy, does he. Lando's engineer comes over the radio and says, we're not going to match Perez with the strategy, go after Sainz. And Lando's filled with confidence at this point and says, You got it. I'm after him. I'll go get him. And he does. He catches straight up to him again. Seconds out of the lap times. He's right up behind him. Again, peels off into the pit lane. Lando stays out again. And you heard over the commentary, time and time again, we're waiting for a safety car. We're waiting for a safety car. They're all playing for the safety car. Well, Lando Norris did play the safety car, and it paid off fantastically. Job wasn't done. The restart looked a little bit shaky coming off the line straight away. It looked like he might have fluffed it, but no. Miami, tough track to get past. The tyres are scrubbing all over the place. Lando Norris holds on, pulls out 1 second over the one lap before the DRS is activated, and that is all she wrote. He was sublime. The speed he pulled out of the McLaren was fantastic, and we've finally seen it. How many times have we said, oh, Lando's in second, but he's 15 seconds clear of everyone else behind him? He would have won if Max Verstappen wasn't there and he'd been dominant. He's done it up front. 7 seconds clear from Max Verstappen, who, from what we know, had no issues with his car. This was a fantastic performance from him, one that he could pat himself on the back. There was no, oh, Max broke down and I didn't have a challenger. They played their cards perfectly, and then he executed it brilliantly. It was a great performance.
Harry, what did you make of the way that Lando Norris claimed victory? Because, as mentioned, I think after the safety car peeled in, we thought that it might not be a slam dunk for Max Verstappen, but for Lando Norris to extend that gap the way that he did, how did you view that?
This is maybe a bold claim here. I think Lando Norris is winning this without the safety car.
I think he's in the fight. I really think he's in that fight.
When Verstappen pits, he comes out, he's about 10 seconds behind Norris. And then it doesn't really move from 10 seconds. And just before the safety car, it actually gone up to like 11 and a half seconds. So Norris is now pulling away on old mediums versus new hards for Verstappen. And I was thinking, this is game on here. Then obviously Kevin Magnussen and Logan Sargent were playing silly games. And the safety car, silly buggers. And the safety car came out, and it obviously then was game on. But yeah, I think the pace Norris had, I think he's in, like you say, he's in the fight. I think he could have won it anyway. So it was. I wasn't. Was confident that he was just going to run away in the style that he did after the safety car, because it's he's got Max Verstappen behind him. But I was fairly confident if he could do the restart, then he was in with a very good shout of holding on. And it wasn't just holding on. He had the legs on Verstappen easily for the remainder of the race, and just built that gap up, lap by lap. It was very, very impressive. And I'm sure McLaren fans were worried, as you said, Sam, for those last 20 laps or so. But Norris just looked like he could have done that all afternoon. Did not look concerned, didn't look ragged. And even on the last lap, he was still flying around. It looked like he was not, he was taking risks, but he was just in the groove, like could have just kept going. So it was very assured. And not that there have been question marks over Norris, but there have been a few occasions where opportunities have arisen for him to take a win or a pole position, and there's been a mistake or a bad call made, but not today. Any qualms about that are certainly gone. So because he was just looked very Verstappen-esque, which is probably the biggest compliment I can give him.
I think that's fair. And similar to the point you were making there, obviously the moment of Lando Norris winning was pretty epic, and that's not British bias. That's just a new winner winning in F1 is an epic moment for whoever achieves it. But actually, for me, everything that preceded that was brilliant as well. I thought before the safety car came out, it was a great race. And I actually agree with what you said, Harry, in that I think the race would have been just as good without the safety car. I think the end of that race was shaping up really well, to the point where I think Lando Norris would have been in that fight with Max Verstappen. And I wouldn't have been surprised if he was a couple of seconds behind with 5 laps to go or something along those lines. And in a weird way, and because I don't necessarily just look at the result of a race and say how exciting it was, I think there was a version of events where Verstappen wins that race with no safety car by half a second over Lando Norris, with Norris chasing him down in the last few laps, that would have been just as exciting as what we saw with Lando Norris taking his first win. Genuinely believe that. It was, I thought it was an epic race that could have gone either way if it weren't for that safety car. Lando Norris put in an excellent performance. I think, in the early stages, he was biding his time, I think, just behind Sergio Perez, because he was about a second and a half off of Sergio Perez for a good chunk of that first stint. And then all of a sudden, he went, right? And then Sergio Perez peels into the pits. And you could tell by the confidence where he was 5 seconds or so behind Carlos Sainz when Perez came into the pits. At that point, I think in most races, if you'd have asked him, let's go on, catch up to Carlos Sainz, he'd have gone with something like, I'll do my best, or I'll try, I'll start putting in the laps. He was confident at that point. He was like, yeah, let's go get him. At that point, I thought, okay, this guy's got some serious pace out here. And you're right, how he performed on those hard, old medium tyres versus the new hard tyres. I do think the medium tyre had a weird advantage over the hard tyre today, but he was excellent. And I actually think he would have extended that stint even further if the safety car hadn't have come out. So yeah, really excellent performance. And I wasn't going to say this, but I am going to say this. Thank God it wasn't a sprint, man. Thank God he came his first win like this, because I don't know, it just wouldn't have been as epic. So that was
I made the comment maybe a couple of months ago now, that, when you hear race wings now, and there's no disrespect to Max Verstappen, he's a legend of the game at this point, and he's superb at what he does. But when someone wins that often, over and over again, that was simply lovely. We had a lovely time. Thanks all. You kind of get a bit like, oh, right, yeah, what does it mean? But when you see someone win their first Grand Prix, especially after what Lando's gone through with how many, near misses he's had, and that elation and the crying and the crowd surfing with his team and the screaming through the garage, the Lando, that was honestly, fan or not, you've got to smile. And you saw the other drivers coming up to him. Max was grinning ear to ear. You saw Russell, Ricardo, and others, Alonso, coming over, slapping him on the back, giving him a hug. It was a real wing of a day for Formula One today, having something like this, having a story like this. And you know what? Miami will benefit, because Miami as a racetrack has taken a lot of slack from us, and rightfully so. But it was almost a perfect storm at Miami. The track grip was confusing. It was very difficult to get it just right for each driver. The tyres were scrubbing and sliding all over the place. And overtaking seemed really, really difficult due to the tailwind that they were receiving. DRS did not seem particularly potent, which is perfect. You want it to just give a little bit extra, so you might have a chance at a lunge. And we saw near misses. We saw slight collisions. We saw great overtakes being made in unorthodox places. You look at how Leclerc got past a couple of people, how Hamilton got past Tsunoda through the Mickey Mouse section halfway around the track. This racetrack today delivered a sublime race. And so you're right, even without Norris maybe winning, even without the safety car, we were having a sensational Grand Prix today. It really was one of the best Grand Prix we've seen this season. Maybe it was the best Grand Prix we've seen this season. I need some more time to soak it in. But it was a really good race day for Formula One, and it needed it, I think.
How much did F1 need that today, Harry?
F1 and Miami were my under pressures for this weekend, and they've delivered.
You've called it.
Thank you, F1. Thank you, Miami. Yeah, look, F1. That was my point, really. Ahead of the weekend, we needed this weekend. And look, I'm not saying this was an all-time belter, but in the context of the season and I guess the last year or so, we just needed that variety in F1. And I think the most important thing was this wasn't and as you made this point earlier, Sam, this wasn't Max Verstappen retired, or it was like Singapore last year. I know that it was a normal dry race, but the Red Bull had zero pace that weekend. Like, it was just a weird anomaly.
No retirements out front.
Exactly. This was just a race where Red Bull were outpaced. Verstappen was outpaced, which we've not seen for, but I don't know, since 2022 maybe, or certainly
Brazil
for a Red Bull.
22?
Yeah, Brazil 22. That's probably as far back as you need to go. So it's been a while, and that's the sort of race F1 needed, and also it's been a bonus for the fact that we've got a first time race winner out of it. So yeah, well done. I mean, well done to there's not no one's done this, but
well done events.
Yeah, well done events for generating this one. Bernie Eccleston back at it with the script.
Yeah, we were only missing the sprinklers coming up. Should we give out a driver of the day? Although this might be a bit of a clean sweep, Sam.
Yeah, there were some honourable mentions, and I think it's quite obvious where we're going with this, but let's shout them out first. I think that Lewis Hamilton probably had his best race day this season. Clung to the back of that Red Bull like Spider-Man hanging onto that train during the film. He was not letting go of it, and bless him, it was really pulling him along. Really, really good from him. Yuki Tsunoda did a brilliant job, played the safety car brilliantly, held on in front of George Russell. Great points, especially considering that we were considering how far off he was to Daniel Ricciardo over the sprint period of this weekend. Hulkenberg did really well, but Ocon, we're going to talk about him later as well, scores first points for Alpine. Fantastic news for Alpine. They brought upgrades. They finally met the weight limit. Score a point. Well done, Esty. You've done it, and I'm behind on teammate wars, but you deserve the credit. So well done, you. But I'm gonna give it obviously to Lando, who has blowing us all away this weekend. The signs looked like they were there at the start of the weekend, and he delivered when it mattered. So well done to Lando.
From my side, same shout outs. Yuki Tsunoda was great. Both Alpines I thought were very good, but Lando Norris was my driver of the day. Harry?
3. Yeah, the same. I agree with all your shouts as well. I know I'm head of the fan club, but I'd also shout Alonso in there again because I don't think that car deserved any points today. But easily Norris for me.
Worst driver of the day, Sam?
We've got equally when you have a lot of good, sometimes you get a lot of bad, and there were a few that I was struggling with. They commented how.
Wow, that must have been a really bad point.
So bad he's been muted by technology.
Right, I'm back, you little pagan.
Lewis Hamilton? That's ridiculous.
I keep pulling out my microphone. This is something I've got to sort out. All right, he's clearly heard me and gone, I'm going to go at that little weasel. But yeah, you can't rack off that many penalties and take out another driver again and just carry on circulating. So yeah, K-Mag, you were not good this weekend, but I love it. I love the drama.
He's my driver of the weekend, if that was an option.
That's a contrast. What about you, Harry?
Worst driver, I'll go for Alex Albon. Don't think he was very good today, was he? Are you going to break for that corner at the end?
Me, that's a lockup.
Yeah.
But I mean, all weekend, to be honest, he hasn't looked particularly punchy, even versus Sargent. So I'll go for Albon. It's not a massive dig on him because I don't think the Williams was particularly excellent anyway. But it's a bit scrappy.
You know how sometimes the worst driver of the day, you struggle to come up with one, and then you might just be able to find one driver or maybe two drivers. I genuinely think there are about 7 drivers today that weren't as good as what I thought they could have been. I thought Sergio Perez was poor. I thought George Russell underwhelmed. I thought Alex Albon underwhelmed, that you've already said, Harry. Daniel Ricciardo, at least if we're looking at the race itself, made no impression whatsoever. I have, and we'll discuss the incident a little bit later on in the show, I have also gone with Kevin Magnussen because if he hadn't had that crash, let's put that to one side, it was still an awful race for him. He was really nowhere near where he needed to be, and obviously Nico Hülkenberg is fighting in and around the points. So I have gone for Magnussen. Big brain strat, Sam?
I was just going to... Have we played none of the jingles? Do you want me to play this one on there?
Yeah, 1 out of 3 is not bad. Let's go with that.
So
Let's go with 30%.
Bob, we're gonna need you to box for wets. What? It's not even raining out. What are you talking about? Yeah, and Bob, if you get a chance, let your teammate pass you. What? He crashed out. He's not even in the race.
at least it's the best one.
Yeah.
That's true. What was your big brain strat, Sam?
I think there were surprisingly quite a few options in this one. And I won't spoil any others, so I'm just going to pick my one. But I wrote it down quite early, and it was the awful Ferrari dummy when they go...
This might be all 3 of us, because I don't see how it can be anything else.
It's so funny. It's the most office-esque pit stop dummy. I go, oh, do we need to go out? He's already gone past the entrance. He's come and gone. It was so bad. so badly done. It just really made me howl with laughter the way they kind of all half walked out with tyres not even in their hands. I was like, yeah, you've fooled McLaren with that one, guys. So that was my big brain strap.
Harry?
I can't look past that. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. Box opposite to Piastri. Even I mean, I know Crofty gets confused at the best of times. Side note, can we talk about Crofty at some point later today?
I don't know if I've got
but yeah, Crofty gets confused at the best of times. And when it said box opposite to Piastri, and then he's like, Piastri's gone through, and there's a pause, and he went, yeah, and so is Leclerc. Okay. Terrible dummy. Maybe it's such a good dummy, such a bad dummy it's good. I don't know. But Ferrari, come on.
They went, do you remember that one in the playbook? We should try it. And then he's never executed it before.
Excellent work.
Never know your next move and all that. I'm going to have to offer some variety. So I'm going to go with Sauber. Like every team going, we like medium and hard tyres. And Sauber being like, nah, softs. No one else, apart from the late pit stop for the likes of Alex Albon. But yeah, they committed to the soft tyre early on for Valtteri Bottas, which didn't work. And then they put Zhou Guanyu on the soft tyre towards the end of the race, which equally, he was all right, actually, but it faded towards the end. So, yeah, fair play, Sauber.
Can we also talk about the McLaren double lap with the safety car? Because that one was confusing, because the safety car obviously didn't pick up the leader, right? But it felt very intentional from McLaren to go again, try and confuse the system. And if that was intentional, 100% intentional, quite big brain, I thought.
What did they? I don't understand.
So the safety car picked up the wrong pack, didn't it?
Because picked up Verstappen.
Because Lando also didn't come in on the lap straight after the safety car was called. The flag came out for safety car.
I thought he came on that lap.
Stayed out another lap and then went in, which meant that he actually had a much bigger gap. Instead of like an 11-second gap, he had a 30-second gap back to the pack, which meant that his pit stop was, you can have a Valtteri Bottas-esque pit stop and still come out in front. If it was intentional, blinder.
Yeah, rate that if that was intentional.
I did enjoy David Croft thinking that Lando Norris was now going to be a lap ahead of the field.
He really was adamant that Lando was going to be one lap clear.
Yeah, that was interesting. Right, let's take our first break on this episode. On the other side, we're going to be chatting Ferrari, Mercedes, and Sergio Perez. Okay, welcome back, everyone. As you'd have heard before we went to our last break, we were talking about our driver of the day and worst driver of the day. There'll be plenty more of that chat on our Power Rankings episode on Patreon. The link is in the description. We'll be recording it tomorrow as we record this. So I imagine with how much happened, there's probably going to be some disagreements across the three of us. We'll be scoring each driver out of 10. Let's go on to Ferrari. They started 2-3 and they ended 3-4, which doesn't sound great, but equally they've done far worse in the past. So they at least got one car on the podium. What did you make of their Grand Prix, Sam? Because I mistakenly said I did my classic nearly being right yesterday by saying I actually thought Max Verstappen was going to be vulnerable. I said the wrong team they'd be vulnerable to. Did you think they were going to offer a little bit more?
Yeah, well, you caused me flashbacks there of the coveted Ferrari 5-6 that they pulled out of Hungary a couple of years ago, which was a great result for them. I imagine if you'd said to Ferrari, you're going to start 2-3, but you'll finish 3-4, and they'll go, oh, I imagine Perez has got back through, right? Red Bull 1-2. And they probably go, yeah, okay, we can settle for that. We understand. But that's not the case. Not only did you not get beaten by both Red Bulls, one was still behind you, and you got beaten by McLaren instead. That McLaren went on to win the Grand Prix. Now, I don't think this was a case of Ferrari should have been fighting with Lando Norris the entire time at the front, because I do think that those upgrades that McLaren brought were incredibly effective. I thought they got the job done. They were a great step forward mechanically and aerodynamically for McLaren. Well done. Brilliant job. So I do think the Ferrari overall was a slower race car than McLaren. Now, what I did think they could offer was a closer fight with the battle that happened throughout the Grand Prix and strategically. It kind of felt like they were caught a little bit in getting stuck behind certain cars and not knowing when the right lap to box was. The whole weird dummy that they pulled off. It felt like they were trying to be very, very reactive and they weren't running their own race. And then when they finally did bring the likes of Leclerc in, he gets stuck behind Tsunoda and that group at the back of the points area, and that's tricky for him to get through. Russell is also in the area as well, one of the pits. Perez falls into the same trap. We're going to talk about him later. It just felt like at every turn, they were never at 100%. They never executed something perfectly, fluidly, to the point where they go, yeah, we've smashed that. We're ahead of the game. They were always on the back foot. And so I don't think they were going to win that Grand Prix. And I don't really think they were going to beat Max Verstappen. But I thought they could put up a bit more of a challenge. So overall, 3-4, solid result. I think they could be relatively happy with it. And Leclerc said, after not having any practice and only doing 3 laps in qualifying, picking up a podium, not too shabby, really. But I'm sure they'll go winging our upgrades to work over the next couple of races when we bring them in, because now we've got to take a big step forward. It's not just Red Bull we need to catch.
Harry, how did Ferrari view this one?
Yeah, like you say, it was... I don't think they can be really massively disappointed, but also... the McLaren coming past them and then winning the races, that's got to hurt a little bit, because clearly the Red Bull was vulnerable today, but they were just with it the whole time, but just never could do enough about it. The pace wasn't awful. It was good. It was pretty good all round. But just there's not much more they couldn't just push that extra bit more that Norris could do, for example, to be quicker than Verstappen. So yeah, I guess encouraged by the fact that it was pretty solid. But I guess I'll be hoping for, they've got upgrades coming for Imola, no?
Yeah.
I guess I'll be hoping that does what it did for McLaren in the same vein, because Ferrari were close today, but just not close enough. So yeah, on the face of it, obviously converting a 2-3 to a 3-4 doesn't seem brilliant, but I don't think it was a terrible afternoon for them.
Yeah, it was a bit of an odd one. You're right, because it certainly wasn't a terrible afternoon for them, but equally they can't go away from this weekend completely happy. I think a combination of Leclerc and Sainz might have been able to put up a fight, because certainly in that first stint, I was really surprised at how slow Charles Leclerc was at the beginning of the first stint. Based on the sprint race, I thought he'd be able to somewhat keep up with Max Verstappen. Instead, obviously, Piastri has the pace to get by him. And then Charles Leclerc, as soon as he'd kind of recovered that, seemed to have all right pace. But at that point, he's stuck behind Piastri and can't really do a great deal. Similarly with Carlos Sainz, he was pretty quick in the first few laps of the race, to the point where there was an active discussion on whether they were going to let him by or not. But actually, once they got settled into their rhythms, it was Leclerc that was quite confidently better, and Sainz dropped back by a few seconds. So it never felt like both cars were operating, I don't know, operating at their best at the same time. And it was nearly there, just not quite. So look, I think based on 27 points, at least from the race itself, fine sprint race as well for Leclerc. So, I think it is an okay weekend points wise. They do need to look out for McLaren. It's still very early in the season. McLaren have done a good job of being consistent across the first few races, to the point where if their upgrades are not just Miami specific and they do actually work everywhere else, that gap could become, that gap could come down very quickly. So they are going to be hoping their upgrades work in Imola. But yeah, I think overall they'll come away from this weekend going, fine, sure, we'll take it.
Still the second top scoring team, weren't they? Still score more points than McLaren as a constructor. Only one less than Red Bull. It's, I think 28 in total for Red Bull, 27 for Ferrari, 25 for McLaren. So, yeah, no glory. But when you look at the points tally, they pull ahead of McLaren. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. I think we're seeing a symptom of them not being a fully succinct built team. And that is the crux of Formula One. You're two individuals fighting for one team. Science isn't really a part of that team right now. And I do think that's where some of the hesitancy is about letting Science pass Leclerc to go, team orders, swap over, you're faster right now, we'll give it back later. In the same way that we heard McLaren come over the radio and go, Piastri, do not cause a safety car right now, because Lando could win this, and that'll be your fault if it gets brought back to the end. That's the kind of team orders you would expect when your team is one and you're aiming for the same goal. So, yeah, it's a difficult time at Ferrari, but I think they'll walk away with this going, it could have been much worse for us.
What did you make of Sergio Perez's race, Harry?
Pretty bad, no? Wasn't great out there.
That noise is a great encompassing of what we thought.
I enjoyed his attempt at recreating Lewis Hamilton's turn 1 from the sprint. A great effort, and I think
he did a better job.
Yeah.
He just didn't hit anyone, but
he gave it a good old go, didn't he? Yeah, that wasn't it was a scrappy start from him, but yeah, I know the Red Bull clearly wasn't at its dominant best today, but even so, he just seemed to be defending from people all afternoon. It was just it would just be with someone else. It was a Ferrari. It was a McLaren in Piastri. It was it was McLaren in Norris, wasn't it? Apologies.
Yeah.
And then it was Hamilton towards the end. Obviously, he kept Hamilton behind. But yeah, his pace just didn't seem particularly good. And maybe again, that's that natural gap we talk about between Verstappen and Perez. And maybe that's acceptable. But it just seemed. Yeah, it didn't seem like a great day. A great day for Perez out there. Yeah, I don't know how much will be picked up on, given that Verstappen didn't win the race. I think that probably helps his case on that one, but it wasn't a great day.
Yeah, it wasn't. And I mentioned him as a close contender for worst driver of the day. I feel like this result and this race, it's got me more disappointed in him than others, because him being 5th place is hardly the first time that's happened. I really felt like there was more on the table for him, and I think it's a missed opportunity. Verstappen was, for whatever reason, and he wasn't the only one, he was not at one with the car this weekend. And I feel it would have been a real opportunity for him to challenge Verstappen, and he wasn't up to it. And actually, the way the race unfolded, you've already mentioned turn 1 and what happened there, the way the race unfolded was pretty good for Perez. He obviously came in quite early for his first pit stop, went onto the hard tyre. And again, for whatever reason, the medium tyre, at least in my opinion, the medium tyre was far better than the hard tyre today. The Norris versus Verstappen, old medium versus new hard, proved that, at least from my perspective. So for Perez to essentially be given the safety car pit stop, he 2-stopped versus others, and to go back on that medium tyre, he's the only car in like the top, I can't remember how far it went down, but he's the only real contender who's on the medium tyre for that last stint. I was thinking at that point, okay, you can stay on the back of the cars in front of you and make some moves here. That is open to you. And he just did not have the pace. At no point in that Grand Prix did he look convinced in terms of the pace he had. Even though it's a 5th place, 10 points, it's still a solid result. I just felt more than usual there was more on the table for him. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I think what really highlighted how poor a performance this was for Sergio Perez, and he needs to be careful. This is he's like a couple of these crop up now over the last couple of races where he has seemingly dropped back off that front row pace that Verstappen is still able to demonstrate despite the car not being 100% happy with where he's got it. But after the safety car, you've got Sergio Perez and you've got Lewis Hamilton on exactly the same set of tyres. And Hamilton's medium tyres are 5 laps older than Sergio Perez's. And you think, okay, that Mercedes is far worse. We know it's far worse than that Red Bull. And Lewis Hamilton's tyres are older. It took about 18 or 19 laps for Sergio Perez to break the DRS from Lewis Hamilton. It took him so long. And they only ended up finishing the race a couple of seconds apart. And I don't think that I think the Red Bull is better than that. And I think the Mercedes is worse than that. Also, I think Lewis Hamilton was having a good Grand Prix. I think he stood out from the crowd a little bit. Sergio Perez was underdriving that car. He was not demonstrating the pace. All the events, as you mentioned, Ben, went in his way. The safety car came at the right time. He was already quite far behind them, but this saved him. Went onto the right tyre, right up behind rivals who are slower than him. Had a slower rival behind that realistically wasn't going to threaten him. And he ends up sticking to the car behind him, who is so much slower and has struggled in every area, and he can't shake him. It's very disappointing. And this is, especially at a track that he did really, really well at last year, of course, starting in front of Verstappen, finished 2nd place. Obviously, that was demoralizing for him, but the result was still good. This is not a good turn of form. These are the kind of races that we actually expected Perez to do well in if he was going to continue to excel in the championship this year. He's got to be careful. He needs to start finding those results from elsewhere if his safety tracks aren't going to deliver in the way they did previously for him.
What about Mercedes, Harry? So it seemed to get better as the weekend went on, but it's still obviously just 6th and 8th at the end of the day. What did you make of their performance?
Again, just no idea why. They don't know what that car is doing any of the time. Russell obviously got caught out a bit at the start with the melee at the start, so he ends up behind Hamilton, which from their strategy, him being on medium and Hamilton on hard was kind of the wrong way round for them almost to be in that order. But it is what it is on that one. But yeah, Russell's pace wasn't particularly great. Hamilton struggled at first on the hard tyres, then once again got embroiled in a battle with a Haas because that's what he does in Miami. Apparently, it's the only way he knows how to operate. Obviously got back past Hulkenberg in the end. Got to say, Hamilton's pace at the end of the race after the safety car was very good. His little move around Yuki Tsunoda, saucy.
That was lovely.
Lovely.
Also, I know Piastri had damage, but the commitment to just go, I'm going around the outside of you as well. Like, he didn't need to do that there and then. And he just chucked it round. Suddenly bravery in Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, so Hamilton's pace at the end, the car seemed to come alive for a minute and Hamilton was on it. And obviously, like we said, he was chasing Perez and looked quicker than Perez, just obviously couldn't get past him because the Mercedes only does about 20 miles an hour in a straight line anymore. So that's a shame for him. But yeah, a sort of just a tale of their current woes in that it's sometimes the car is absolute garbage and sometimes it just comes alive and works for them. But by the time that happens, it's too late. A similar story for them both in Suzuka, wasn't it? They were so bad in that first stint on the hard tyre in Suzuka, and then it came alive in the second half of the race, and they were on the pace with the guys that were on the podium. So, and Hamilton was the same story for Hamilton again today. I think he could have, had he been a bit further up the field with the pace he had, he might well have been possibly on that podium. So, it's just a tale of where they are at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah. From Russell's perspective, like you say, he was caught up in the first corner incident, so that was unlucky on his part. Having said that, he's had a few of these just anonymous races this year, George Russell. Made no impression on Yuki Tsunoda whatsoever, which I was surprised at. I thought it'd stay on the back of him, but really that gap opened up and just, I was going to say it stayed the same, but I think it just ended up growing. So he was a bit anonymous. Lewis Hamilton, yeah, it was a weird weekend for him. Whereas George Russell was pretty anonymous in the race. Lewis Hamilton was he was definitely there, good and bad. Certainly the letting Nico Hulkenberg back through with that incident was sloppy. But the rest of the race I thought was pretty good from his perspective. And yeah, I think if the car was set up slightly better, and he was able to get past Sergio Perez, because he definitely had the pace to get by, then maybe he makes an impression on the cars in front. We will never know. But hey, I mean, you've got to set up your car, right, Mercedes? So yeah, do that maybe.
Overrated.
Yeah. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, Russell goes to get the face today. Got caught up at that melee, as you all said, but I would have expected, arguably on the better tyre, for him to make more of an impression on Lewis Hamilton and the cars around him at the start of that Grand Prix. You saw how much Fernando Alonso struggled to switch on that hard tyre at the beginning of the strategy. Lewis Hamilton didn't really seem to have that much of a problem. Yes, he got caught up behind the Haas, and as you both mentioned, he makes the sloppy mistake of locking the brakes and letting Hulkenberg straight back through. Entirely a him thing. But it was always Hamilton was on the attack. Hamilton was always the one pressuring someone in front. It never felt like Hamilton was struggling with someone coming from behind him and had the option to be overtaken himself. And he's starting on that hard tyre. Russell starting on the medium tyre with cars around him. Couldn't get past the RB. Couldn't get anywhere near the Haas for a long time. And then once all the traffic did clear and those two are running together, the gap just was slow, but it slowly grew. It was about 1.5 seconds for a while, then it moved up to 2 seconds, and then it got to 2.5 seconds. Russell this Grand Prix never had the pace on Lewis Hamilton today. So interesting to see how it ebbs and flows. And I do think it's setup related. I do think those two just don't know what they're doing with the car at the moment, because it's such a beast to control that one of them will do something. It will happen to work. Oh, this is good. The other one will not do that because they'll go, we'll try something different. And it will be horrible. And they'll just suffer with it for the entire Grand Prix. And then I just don't think they know what the cause and solution is in this scenario. But you're right. This is where Mercedes are. They're the fourth fastest car. They maximised the fourth fastest car, I guess, today. Sixth and eighth was arguably as good as that car can get. Maybe seventh should have been on the cards for Russell, but Tsunoda outdrove him, and it was a great drive.
This next segment could get ugly, folks. We're going to review our bold predictions. Let's start with Sam Sage, shall we? How many red flags did you say there were going to be?
So I said there were going to be 3 red flags across competitive sessions.
How many did you count?
In the Porsche races, there were 2. So
cool. How many did you count?
There were none.
I love the disclaimer where you're still not right. That's brilliant.
Oh yeah, I was close.
Yeah.
If I lied and cheated, I'm still wrong.
I'm so annoyed at my one. I'm so annoyed.
Again, it's happened again.
Ridiculous. I said that both RB Minardi drivers would score points in the main race. You know, the one where 10 drivers score points. Unfortunately, only Yuki Tsunoda did, so I'm wrong. But of course, they both scored in the sprint race where only 8 positions score points. But I very much clarified I meant the main race. So I am annoyingly wrong. Harry wasn't here for his bold prediction, but he did send his in. His bold prediction was that Sauber would do a pit stop of under 3 seconds, which myself and Sam challenged.
You slated, I think.
Slated. I haven't got all of the pit stop times, but Zhou Guan Yu, at least one of his pit stops, 2.7 seconds, which is under 3 seconds.
Hey, I'm at the mercy of what you decide. So, but you know,
should have put it to a Discord poll. Damn it!
If Sam can have Daniel Ricciardo scoring a point in China,
I did challenge that, to be fair.
He did challenge that, to be fair.
But it was allowed.
I can't let this one go, Harry Eid.
It's okay, mate. Don't care.
You're in dreamlands. You must still be napping, sunshine.
I wish I was napping.
I'm happy for you to have this, because that will mean that Sam has 1 point, Harry has 1 point, and I have no points. And I just need some motivation to actually get one of these correct. So I feel like something's got to break my bad streak. That might be it. That's the incentive I need.
Discord army, rise up, defend us, please.
It's a 1-0 and then another TBC 1 is where we're at there.
1.5-0.
Discord, support us.
Let's go to our next break. On the other side, we're gonna be stewards. We're gonna have a look at a couple of incidents and determine what we think should have happened.
I'm so angry. I've pulled my microphone off the desk.
There.
Not just me.
Feel a bit left out. Hang on.
Just throw it out the window.
Yeah.
Well, everyone.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. Action-packed Grand Prix meant that the stewards had a few things to work out today. Let's have a look at a couple of them. Kevin Magnussen and Logan Sargent, of course, the incident that brought out the safety car that turned the race on its head. Logan Sargent out on the spot. Kevin Magnussen picking up another penalty. Sorry, another penalty. Another penalties, plural. Man is collecting them like top trumps at this point. Kevin Magnussen essentially trying to go up the inside of Logan Sargent. They have contact. Sam, the 10-second penalty applied to Kevin Magnussen. Is that how you saw it as well?
I was really unsure on this one. And initially, I thought Logan Sargent was at fault. He didn't check to see if a car was alongside him. Kevin Magnussen seemingly had his 2 front wheels, his front axle, ahead of Logan's rear axle. So he was comfortably halfway alongside, but he was the attacking vehicle, so to speak. And I believe that the onus is on the attacking vehicle to be the one to be sensible, to be safe, to make sure the move is done effectively. The only exception to that is if you see someone weaving in the braking zone or something like that. But Logan Sargent had the move done. He was on the racing line, and it's a very unorthodox place to overtake. I'm not saying that means you shouldn't, and you should not get penalised for that, but you've got to be very aware of what's around you when you defend or overtake in those scenarios. I do think overall, K-Mag shouldn't have stuck his nose in there and was trying to be a little bit advantageous and they ended up ruining someone's race. So contact, I think, was initiated by K-Mag. I think he could have been more patient. So yes, I think 10 seconds for that incident ended up being correct.
Fair penalty, Harry?
I don't know anymore. I just don't. I cannot fathom what the stewards deem. What's their criteria for a 10-second penalty anymore? Because I agree. I think he deserves the penalty. Sargent, to be fair, I know it's not necessarily up to him to jump out the way, but maybe could have been circumspect. If looking back on this, he probably could have given him a little bit more room, because considering they were having a battle into that corner. But K-Mag was the one that, as you say, Sam stuck his nose in. But I don't know what he did there as bad as some of the stuff he did yesterday in the sprint race. But he still got the same amount of the same penalties for things he was doing there, which were more blatant and unsportsmanlike. This was a 50-50, and I don't agree. I don't disagree with the penalty, as in I don't disagree with the fact that a penalty was given. I think I disagree with the amount of time that was added, that was given to him. So yeah, I don't know. Stewards just making it up as they go along.
Question for the board of race stewards. Equally here, comparing it to a penalty that happened in China, which has been spoken about a lot as they were trying to rescind it, alongside Sainz, right? Wheel-to-wheel bang, 10-second penalty points awarded. That, I would argue, was less intrusive, right? As a wheel-to-wheel racing incident around the corner. This was essentially a T-boning. What, has he got penalty points for this? I may have missed it. That's why I'm asking. But otherwise, it's a smaller penalty.
But even with the penalty points aside, how is that the same? How is that the same on-track penalty for the Alonso Sainz one as this one here? I don't. We
need to come up with some kind of thing. Sorry to use a British European footballing reference, Americans, if you're unsure. We have red cards and yellow cards, and maybe we need something like that. That one type of contact is deemed a yellow card, which is equal to X amount of time, and another level of contact is deemed as a red card, which is deemed as X amount of time. And then that way you can have several scenarios that fit under the umbrella of yellow card, red card. I don't know. Maybe that's a way to make it more clear. Because you're right, Harry. Why is one contact better or worse, or what does it mean until we're told?
And also, we spoke about this last year. There's a reel of Ben talking about this. Stewarding last year just kept giving out 5-second penalties. They decided this year they're going to do 10s instead. Well, all 10s. You can do both. Yeah, you don't have to just do one time. You can do different times.
I'm on the other side of this. I think Logan Sargent was at fault for this. I think Magnussen was fully entitled to space there. I think Logan Sargent, you're right, he's on the inside defending into turn one, but goes quite deep to the point where Kevin Magnussen is alongside him as they're going through almost the corner before they crash, where there's the curbing on the left-hand side. They are pretty much side by side at that point. There's a good 2 seconds where Magnussen is side by side, at least in terms of my definition of side by side, where Logan Sargent should have seen him there. And of course, Logan Sargent, it wasn't a conscious decision to cut him off. He thinks he's not there, but equally, I think that's just as bad as if he had made a decision consciously. It completely depends on whether you think Magnussen is entitled to the space there. I do. I don't think Magnussen did anything wrong. Was it opportunistic? Sure. I don't want to dissuade drivers from trying these lesser seen overtakes because it's not an overtaking spot. I think any point on the track can be an overtaking spot. And I think anytime you're alongside another car, you're entitled to space. So I thought Logan Sargent was at fault for this one. And I thought this might have been the only penalty that Kevin Magnussen got all weekend where I didn't agree with it.
Do you think that that's where the problem lies, Ben? That maybe it's the writing of the rules and the interpretation of what is alongside that is causing this much confusion? Because equally, my first thought was K-Mag was halfway alongside, right? There's enough of a car there that he's entitled to race alongside of him. And that's why, and then I kind of rethought the rules out and I went, well, actually, according to the rules, he's not far enough alongside, so therefore he's wrong. And that seems confusing, especially to newcomers.
Yeah, I mean, the way I would do it is if you're front tyre is in line with the rear tyre of the car in front, you are therefore enough alongside to warrant space. I mean, there were plenty of incidents, Sainz and Piastri, as one we'll get onto in a moment, where particularly into that turn 11, where cars were just driving the other car off the track. Like, they would use all of the track available, not go off the track themselves, but to the point where the other car can't do anything. I don't agree with that. I don't like that way of racing. I would rather you have to leave one car's width to the outside driver so that these battles can actually keep going through the next corner and the corner after that. And we don't get that, because for the drivers, it just makes sense to drive the other one off the track, because if they're not going to be penalized for it, why on earth wouldn't you do it? So yeah, I think there is, people are going to have different interpretations of what racing should and shouldn't be. But I think the lack of clarity from what is and isn't allowed absolutely does lead to this sort of thing. Speaking of Piastri and Sainz, so they had multiple incidents. How did you view them, Sam?
Yeah, the one I want to talk about is the obvious one where Piastri ends up gaining massive damage on that front wing. Proper crumpled it, didn't it? Probably bent it around like a bit of paper that you just muck around with. This is entirely on Carlos Sainz. I think Carlos Sainz has not seen red, but he was clearly frustrated by everything that had gone on and the past that had happened previously, where Piastri had overtaken by essentially running Carlos Sainz off the track, and it didn't have to give the position back, which happened multiple times throughout the Grand Prix, as Ben's already mentioned. But, you know, moves are separate from one another. They're not linked. So I'm going to talk about the hairpin move. I think Sainz should have been penalised for this. It was essentially a block pass. Piastri had nowhere to go. He couldn't turn in. He couldn't get the car turned in at all. He either had to keep driving straight towards a wall, because that is a wall right in front of that hairpin, or he drives into Carlos Sainz. There is two options. So it felt reckless. I don't think Sainz had control of the car. He causes severe damage to Piastri. He instigates the contacts. And I do think that Carlos Sainz should have been penalised for that move.
You agree with that, Harry?
I don't think it was that. I don't think it was. I know it was a bit of a chancy one from Sainz, but I don't think it was that bad. It's where the rules lie anymore. I don't really know, because for me the worst one was the Piastri one, because he was barely making the corner himself, let alone the fact that he had Carlos Sainz next to him. So yeah, they are. Maybe both of them deserve penalties. I don't know, but that's how they've called it and gone, well, you're both as bad as each other, so neither of you get penalties. I don't know. It was a messy fight, and I agree. I think Sainz was frustrated by the fact that he wasn't given that position back, but I don't think there was any particular malice behind Sainz's move. I think it was just a bit of he was on a bit of a knife edge going into that corner trying to get the move done, and he lost control a bit. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe they both deserve one, but I wasn't as offended by the Sainz move as I was the Piastri one, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the first one, the Piastri one, this is another case of, I don't think it should be in the rules, but it is. He is allowed to do that. I don't think it's good, and I would penalise that sort of move, but based on the rules as they are, he doesn't deserve a penalty. The one with Sainz in the sort of penultimate corner of the lap, yeah, felt pretty slam dunk to me. I mean, he has basically just driven into him and caused him damage that has ended his race. I agree that I think Carlos Sainz lost his composure. And again, I think rightfully so, because I don't think that move should be allowed. But, you know, I think for whatever reason, he lost his composure, was desperate to get by. And that desperation has caused him to quite severely lock up into that corner to the point where Piastri is just a bit of a passenger. So, yeah, I don't think he could have had too many complaints if he did get penalised for that. Let's move on to Aston Martin. Harry, you've already given Fernando Alonso a little bit of a shout out for the job that he did to get back to P9. Of course, he started 15th, the only Aston Martin who ended up scoring points in today's race. What did you make of their performance? Because, you know, it didn't seem as if the car was at one with this circuit.
Not at all, no. And to be honest, I think Alonso was good today and better than he was yesterday. It still wasn't his finest weekend, I don't think, but he was helped out by this where the safety car came out, because he and Ocon, who he seems to have been battling eternally with this weekend in Miami. They were just on track at the same time for some reason, but they both could pit under the safety car, which I think helped his cause there. So yeah, I think he did well to salvage a couple of points out of this. But yeah, their pace was I think the worrying thing for them, and I hope they'll probably be hoping it's a blip. The worrying thing for them was that their pace has dropped and converged with the improving pace of an Alpine, which if you consider where they started the year, I know I'm not saying Aston Martin were a top team at the start of the year, but so that's going to worry them a little bit that the Alpine is they're having battles with Alpine, given where Alpine were at the start of this year. So not the most encouraging weekend, but yeah, they'll be hoping that it was more just a bit of a one-off, and then more towards their China pace again. In fact, not their China pace, because that wasn't good then either, was it? Which is Alonso, but more towards the pace they had at the start of the year.
What did you make of Aston Martin's race, Sam?
It's starting to slip down a slope, isn't it? And I think we've been seeing signs of it. China was the first one, but Fernando Alonso's been out driving that car all season, and I think he's been masking how, not poor the Aston Martin is, because poor is harsh, but how far away it was from their peak of performance last season. Alonso has been putting up a fight to show that car might be equal with the Mercedes. And I think I was sold a little bit on his ability paired with that car, and kind of believed that maybe it was just Lance Stroll not being good enough at all that meant that they didn't have two drivers in that scenario. But actually, I very much feel that this was the first time that Fernando Alonso fell back to where Lance Stroll was normally driving, and the car really did struggle round here. This might be the first occasion of many. It might start a trend where Aston Martin are struggling. They've fallen into that midfield pack, and they have become one of those teams that are just trying to get one car into the points, trying to get a 9th place or a 10th place. So they need to be careful. They need to bring some updates. Otherwise, they will get swallowed up by a resurgent Haas, an improving Alpine, the RB that are making those upgrades. That pack is so close that if you do drop back a couple of tenths, you could very much be at risk of falling into being the 7th or 8th fastest car. And that could be so detrimental to that championship money that comes at the end of the season, especially with how many investments they're making at the moment. You know, it's not a good look where you've put that much cash into the whole system and you keep falling back. So not a good sign. The car struggled. The team struggled. Let's hope it's a blip rather than the start of a trend.
Yeah, it was a really tough weekend for them. Fernando Alonso, I think good strategy ultimately helped him out, but you know, that recovery to 9th is pretty solid. I thought Lance Stroll had a pretty all right weekend. I think he was unlucky. With his
side was great as well.
Yeah, and his strategy didn't plan out for him at all. So he was obviously one of the cars that started on the medium tires, went to the hard tire, at which point the safety car comes out, and he's one of the cars that's almost stuck between a rock and a hard place, in that either he carries on with those old hard tires like Pierre Gasly did, and Gasly got a 12th place out of it, which indicates that maybe that was the right call, rather than the decision that Lance Stroll went back on the mediums. But of course, the likes of Alex Albon were holding up the whole pack to the point where Lance Stroll is not able to make any progress at all. I actually thought he was quite unlucky to find himself where he was. And actually, if he was on the same strategy as Alonso, I think in terms of pure pace, he would have been around where Alonso was in this Grand Prix. But yeah, worrying one for them. Also, Esteban Ocon is the GOAT.
He's the GOAT.
Fair play to Esteban. That was, I mean, both Gasly and Ocon looked like at any point they might have been the one to pick up points. And I do think this was Gasly's best performance of his season so far. But Ocon's just, again, another step on that trend. The Alpine was a bit better. It was a difficult race for a lot of drivers. And he did a great job at taking advantage of those that were struggling. Well done. They deserve a point. It's a great turnaround from them. Maybe crypto. No, it's not. It's not the way I'm taking the mickey. I don't want to get taken seriously. But well done then.
And like you say, Pierre Gasly, despite not scoring any points, had a very good weekend as well. Didn't have the better end of the strategy, so it'll be very interesting. Again, power rankings, be interesting to see how those two stack up against one another, whether one scores a bit higher than the other. Let's take our final break on this episode. Moment of the race is on the other side. Okay, moment of the race. We'll give our selections and then hand over to some Discord submissions. I say some Discord submissions. incredibly popular occasion today. There have been a lot of submissions, so thank you to everyone who has got in touch with us via Discord. But as mentioned, we'll kick us off. So Sam, what was your moment of the race?
I'm glad I get to go first because I'm going to take the obvious one. It was a first-time race winner. We saw the passion. We saw how emotional it was. And I was also loving seeing it on the TV. It was amazing to watch. So Lando Norris crossing the line, taking the win, his first ever Grand Prix victory, was my moment of the race.
Harry?
It's year 3 here in Miami. Not here because we're not in Miami, but year 3 at the Miami Grand Prix, and we hadn't seen 2 cars try and go side by side through the little chicane. So
Jesus!
What is wrong with those two?
The Alpine boys decided to give us a bit of entertainment and lap 1 of the race, go through it side by side, and to remain side by side for the next left-hander and continue to fight down that back straight. I laughed out loud. It was excellent work from the pair of them. Easily my moment of the race.
Full disclosure, that was my answer as well. Because honestly, as soon as Sergio Perez went up the inside of turn 1, I was like, right, that'll be the most ridiculous thing that happens on this lap. And then Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon went, nope, hold my lack of employees. It's our responsibility to top that. Side by side through that. That was ridiculous. I would have loved to have filmed myself at that point because absolutely none of it would have been usable based on all of the swear words. But goodness me. You're actually in an all right position. You might grab a point. Don't take each other off. But because you have already said that, Harry, I am going to go with the another Alpine moment. I'll go with the Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon battle because I thought that was top notch. And sorry to make the point again, but it comes back to how I think for the most part seemed pretty fair from both parties. And because they weren't forcing each other off the track, it was able to carry on for a couple of laps and I loved it. So yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah, that was sensational. I just imagine anyone at Alpine that works there, not sure who it is anymore, pick up the phone at the start of, just Ben going, guys, we've got an upgrade. We're weight saving. The car is all right now. Just get through the Grand Prix. Halfway around lap 1 in the most dangerous spot in the entire circuit. Kill each other immediately occurs.
Also, great job, Patrick Mahomes, on the rear left tyre this weekend. Love your work.
Cheers for stepping in, Pat.
Trent will be back in next week. Let's go to some of the Discord submissions, and I'll hand over to Mr. Harry Eade.
First up is the shortest one, and obviously that is from Skylar.
Lando Norris won.
To be fair, it's been a while, and she's done a lot of Lando Norris submissions. I'm glad that she's finally had a moment there.
Oh, Skylar, it's lovely to have you back. I'm glad you're happy.
Next up is Bungers.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is the McLaren CEO. Yeah! And the moment of the race. I mean, let alone Lando getting his first win. Has to be Oscar's engineer saying, please don't bring out a safety car. Let's go! Yeah!
Please, Oscar.
Yeah.
Please don't do it.
Bungers was very emotional, bless him. And that's also lovely to see.
Next up is LJO. I'll say that again. LJL.
This is Lance, friend of the podcast and training, long-time listener, first-time submission.
Nice.
My moment of the race, aside from Lando finally driving brilliantly and getting his first victory, congrats to Lando, was that sweet double pass on Piastri by Perez and Hamilton where they split them going down the backstretch. Great racing, boys. Great race today. Unexpected winner. Love it. Keep doing a great job on the podcast and keep breaking late.
Thank you for your first submission. Love that.
Next up is Charlemagne Fury.
Great game.
Charlemagne Fury, long-time listener, first-time submitter. My moment of the race for the Miami GP was Carlos Sainz crying about Piastri. Just get over it, boy. Just get over it, boy. And then also Max Verstappen basically always complaining about Adrian Newey's car. It just, every single race, it just drives like shit. So, yeah, moment of the race.
First time submission, first time bleep.
On the bleep.
Kirsty's not going to bed until 4.
Yeah, just for everyone's awareness, we're recording this. It's 20 past midnight here.
Also, I'd just like to say, Kirsty chose these, so You made work for yourself
That is a
there.
valid point.
That is a valid point. It's her own fault.
All right, next up is Bristol Liam.
Yeah, Lando Norris has done it and all that stuff, right? Kevin Magnussen, you are a convicted terrorist. They're coming for you. The FBI and all the American police stuff, they're coming for you. Also, just seen Lando's got a plaster on his nose, which is quite funny.
Oh, dear.
American police stuff.
Yeah. Have you not heard of the APS?
No, I hadn't. That's on me.
There were so many of them there because of Kevin Magnussen.
Ill-educated, man. Wow.
Goodness me. Next up is Marine.
Hello boys, this is Marine trying to, or I'm going to submit my moment of the race. And for me, it has to be Max hitting the bollard because I was at a concert and the first thing I saw was him hitting that thing. So it made me laugh. And yeah, congrats to Lando, but that bollard really was my MVP. Greetings from Germany. Love you. Bye.
Oh, yes.
so much.
I really
Tag,
related to
Marine.
Max. When Max hit the bollard, I was like, that is something I would do every time I go around a racetrack on F1, the race game.
Yeah, definitely. Next up is We Should F1 Another.
Oh,
Hey guys, first time submitter here, calling from a terrible place. I hate my life; it's the worst.
oh, okay.
But my moment of the race was Logan Sargent getting to go home early. 18 minutes down the road, and he was able to curl up in his Lightning McQueen bed, enjoy some of his mama's milk. Fresh, we'll say. I mean, I always thought milk should be enjoyed at 37 degrees Celsius. Anyway, good for him. Happy for him.
Ka-chow.
Goodness me.
I hope you're okay, mate. I hope you're all right. Oh, no. Trying to be sympathetic about you hating your life while laughing at mummy's milk.
Just like it should be enjoyed. Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Oh,
Goodness me. Gosh. Oh, thank you for that. Right. Next up is Black Flag Racer.
First of all, shout out to Lando Norris for an awesome maiden win here in Miami. My moment of the race is watching the timing tower as the gap between Lando and Max just got bigger and bigger, and my heart got happier and happier, and the smile got bigger and bigger. Also, shout out to all the Max Verstappen fans who showed up to a race for a guaranteed win and didn't get it.
Side note, Max Verstappen applauding Lando Norris was wonderful.
Yeah, fair.
Sportsmanlike behaviour was exemplary.
The amount of drivers that came out to Lando was
Yeah,
excellent. Enjoyed that
It
a
was
lot.
lovely. Yeah.
F1 Swifties next.
Hey,
Mama
F1 Swifty here. This is my first time ever doing one of these, but of course, my moment of the race is Lando winning. Been waiting a very long time for this. My kids came up to watch this the last few laps with me, and we were all screaming and crying and just really, really happy. Congratulations, Lando.
That's our Discord mama. That's Jamie, that is. She
Screaming.
met us out by the live show, didn't she?
Screaming, crying, throwing it up.
Yeah.
I'm shook that she's never done one before.
Well, we love it. That's it was worth the wait.
Yeah. Huge debut. Inferno Jim is next.
Just a thought here.
Oh, God.
Norris only had to have a cut on his nose to win a race, whereas Sainz had to have his appendix removed. Norris clearly the GOAT. What a race, boys. What a race.
I love that logic.
Cheers.
You must have some sort of injury to win a race in 2024.
Weight saving is extreme this year.
Your ability is based on how injured you are in the lead up to the race.
Yeah.
I like that.
Logan Sargent's going to turn up with only his torso.
You know SpongeBob, where like he's in a full cast.
Strap me in, boys.
Yeah. Be Lewis Hamilton next race on crutches as he walks in.
Yeah.
And finally, we have Nicky Lauda.
Nicky Lauda.
What?
Well, I like to say it's Nicky Lauda, but Lauda spelt as in Can you please say that louder?
Great name.
Not as in Nicky Lauda.
Nikki here. By submission, my moment of the race is coming from F1 TV commentary right at the end when David Coulthard said that Lando was just stroking it home. Stroking it home, he said. He was stroking it home. Thanks, David.
That's such a DC phrase as well. He has said that a lot. He loves telling men on the TV to stroke it home.
Doesn't matter because it still beats what David Croft said.
We're not going to talk about it. I refuse to give it airtime.
He deserves a smack across the face.
Okay, good.
It was bad.
Yes, it was bad.
Oh dear. Anyway, that was everyone. Thank you. That wasn't everyone. Apologies if you didn't make it on, but there were so many of you this time round. But thank you anyway.
I feel like at this point it's 26 minutes past midnight. Sam should probably get us out of here.
Yeah, folks, thank you for listening. If you want to hear our power rankings and more Patreon content, we're really proud of it. Do go and check it out. It keeps this podcast going. Thank you again. And if you don't want to subscribe, well, you can't because, financially, then we appreciate you just turning up to these episodes and listening. It does mean the world. Your support is wonderful. Thank you. Go and subscribe on YouTube if you want to. If you want to see us say this in with a camera. Late Breaking F1. Social media is Late Breaking F1 on every platform, or you can follow us individually if you'd really like to. Discord's available. Get down below. You can have your submission play on the next Grand Prix race that weekend that we do. But thank you anyway. We appreciate it. And we're back midweek, of course, if you just want a normal episode. In the meantime, I've been Samuel Sage.
I've been Ben Hocking.
And I've been Harry Eade.
And remember, keep breaking late.